Hello, welcome back to the garage. Got a bit of a how-to video for you this time. I'm going to be doing a E10 kit and I'm fitting it to a Weber.
Oh dear.
Oh, fire. You don't need a special tool, you need a special tin.
It's alive!
Okay, so in case you aren't aware, or you aren't in the UK, or this isn't an issue elsewhere in the world, a lot of fuss was made in the UK when the fuel changed from E5 to E10, citing rotting the innards of carburettors and rubber seals and rubber fuel hose all starting to degrade and the fuel going off in the tank easier because of the ethanol content going up. So a lot of people are now getting these E10 upgrade kits, whatever you want to call it. This is a let's have a look. It's a Sytek kit. There is also a proper Weber kit. They are priced appropriately and the parts that come with them I believe are appropriate, but this one has been provided by a friend who would like the carb stripped apart, checked everything's okay, and then have the E10 kit fitted to it. This is a 45 DCOE 152 and it is running 34mm chokes and what I can only term as the most horrible linkage. This is one of those things where it works, it gives you full throttle, it opens and closes. The action is very linear and it's very, very heavy. It's not very progressive. Ideally on a throttle you want a very small amount of movement on the first part of the pedal to give you, low throttle openings and cruise and pulling away, and then you want it to really speed up as you go to dump your foot down. And that's not what this does, but the actual Weber one does. So if you get a chance, get the actual Weber one. Get the actual Weber kit. Right, so yeah, fitting the Weber E10 kit. Let's go, let's take the carb apart. Okay, so that's apart. So I now feel it's very important to take the E10 kit out of the bag and show you what's actually involved. So what you get, some gaskets which are only used in certain situations when they're bolted up to a plenum. You've got some trumpet gaskets which again not used in every situation but you get them in case. You've got a top gasket, you've got a bottom gasket, you've got two fibre washers, you've got another big fibre washer here. You get a new valve for the fuel coming in, a couple of other little washers, fibre washer for the top, a new spring if you were to need it, and a new E10 suitable fuel filter. So there's not actually too much, and in the case of this particular carb, it has already been rebuilt. It was rebuilt a few years back and has since sat on a shelf in a box and nothing's happened to it. It's just waiting for the car to get built. You do get a nice little exploded diagram of how the carb goes together so you can see whereabouts bits and bobs go. So it's got the plastic floats in here. The float valve is in there. There is a specific way of setting these up, and I'm just going to have to hope that the float was set up correctly previous, because I'm not going to go and get a special tool for this one occasion, but there is a special tool for setting up the float height. Basically, don't let it leak when the carb is sitting horizontal. So most of it is in the top of the carb. The only thing that's the bottom is this gasket over here. This big gasket here lives inside the return spring mechanism. I'm going to make sure obviously the return spring is still okay, and I don't really want to go changing it if it's been checked. I'll take it off and I'll check it, but I think the rest of it should be okay. The rubber washers would be underneath these bits here. I think there's a couple underneath the sides as well. So yeah, let's crack on with getting this apart. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get this pin here out. Once we get the pin out, the float chamber comes off and we can start getting out everything underneath here, the gasket and all that sort of jazz. I've just used a pair of big pliers here and I've just pushed the pin over towards the split end. Then get a teeny tiny pair of pliers, and the theory is this will just pull out. There we go. Once you've got hold of it, it's not so bad. Okay, so if I can slide it back a bit more. Right, I'm not going to take this all the way out. I'm just going to stop it in the end there, because I don't actually need to take it all the way out. I just leave it hanging there. The float chamber comes off, and now we've got access to the needle ball valve thing. There we go. Okay, as you may have seen, I've added a little tray here. This is to start collecting the parts that aren't going back in the carb, to save them from getting muddled up. So I'm going to get a 10mm socket on here and just undo the valve, and there it is. There's the needle valve out of the way. We've got the silver washer that was on there. Okay, that's them out of the way. Let's get the gasket up and out of the way. There we go. Old gasket out. Now I'm just going to have a quick look and make sure there's nothing untoward, there's no crap sitting in there. Let's get the new one. Wee, easy. Shuttle valve, that's the word I'm looking for. Let's put that around the right way. There we go. Okay, so when you go to take this out of the pot, be warned, that bit does come out the middle. They have a pointy end and a round end. The round end is the end you want to see, this end. Silver washer, there it is. What else have we got? That has to go back on first, and let's see, it's that way, isn't it? There we go. And then we put the float back on. Let's get the pliers again. Just gonna squeeze it back in. There it goes. Right, I'm just gonna use this. I have to go over a bit with that. See if I can squeeze. Right, can you see that? I'm just gonna squeeze it so it's evenly out both ends. That's that part done. The other parts are in here. There's a fat fibre washer and a thin fibre washer. There's nothing in the end there, nothing in that end there. This is a bigger size. There's the other fibre washer. So you've got a skinny fibre washer on the top, a skinny fibre washer on the outside, and a fat fibre washer on the inside. And here is the filter gauze. So that one's starting to look a bit grotty just through having sat, I think. Let's get the new one in. If you look at it, there is a join either side. So I try and make sure that when the fuel comes in, it hits the gauze. I'm probably going to get moaned at in the comments now for doing that wrong, but right, so let's get that one back on there. Let's get a skinny fibre washer on the top, twist it up. Let's get the fat fibre washer for that side. Let's get the inlet pipe, get the skinny washer on the outside edge. Let's just wind them up. There we go. That's all that's involved in the top half. You've got needle valve, you've got the washer underneath it, you've got the gauze underneath the top, small washer, fat washer. That's it. That's not so bad at all, is it? So that's all over there. That's the bits I've taken out. Okay, let's get the carb back in and see what else there is. I'm going to start with the underside here, because if there's anything wrong with this gasket here, the carb's going to leak. And if the carb leaks, especially as this is going to be going on an A series engine, you end up with fuel pissing all over your exhaust manifold, which in itself, you know, hot fuel, hot petrol doesn't actually combust, but it's not an ideal situation where there to be any kind of ignition source in the engine bay, which, being as it's an A-series engine, there could well be. So yeah, this is definitely one to change out. Okay, there is the old part out, and here is the new part. There appears to be a locating dowel of some sort there, but it doesn't look like it is specific on these. What I have noticed is there's just a tiny little bit of residue from the old seal sitting at the bottom here, so I'm gonna just clean that off. Bear with me a second. So let's see. Yeah, it's gonna be a scrape it off with a blade job. Yeah, this is gonna take some time, so I'm gonna chuck on the time lapse and we'll clean it up on time lapse. Okay, so as you can now see, the old bits of gasket are now missing from the top. Nice and clean. I've got the same on the top here. The bits of the old gasket sitting on the top. So being that this carb has been cleaned and rebuilt once before, I don't really want the junk to go inside, so I'm just going to gently scrape that last bit off. Jobbed. Right, now I have seen people, and I've come across people who always insist upon putting sealant on the bottom of carbs, and my friend who rebuilds Weber carbs for a living, shout out to Atspeed Racing while I'm here, he screams blue murder when people do stuff like that. They'll use sealant on here. It does not need sealant, or they take the return spring out. So I think his words are special place in hell for anyone who takes the return spring out of a Weber carburettor. There's probably a specific torque value for this, but if I'm doing this in my garage like this, chances are you will be as well. You should feel with a screwdriver when that's tight enough. And if it feels like it starts getting looser again, time for a new carb. You've stripped the threads. That one's good, that one's good, that one's good, and that one's good. We've got 2 small rubber rings, 2 big rubber rings. Right, so it's going to be these 2. Oh, well, that should have been tighter than that. There is one very old, knackered rubber. Look at the state of that. Just cracked already, deteriorated, and wasn't sealing up on that surface at all. So let's put the new one on. I have seen people put the rubber ring on there and they try and push the thread over it. That's not correct. You slide the rubber ring onto there and then you wind it down. And it should be nipped down, because you do end up with the fuel pressure in there trying to escape. There you go, nips up nicely. Oh, that one's the same, it's barely gone up. This one's gone hard, so let's break that off of there. There we go. Yeah, same as this one. The seal actually broke up as I was doing it. So, new rubber seal. I'll show you closer up this time. Just push it on the top and roll it down. There you go, and it drops in there nicely. So that's back on the top. I don't think there's any other. Those little washers on the top, but they're not going to get affected by it, so I haven't got to worry about that. So let's get on. What else have we got? There we go. That's done up. Let's just have a look in the end here and see if there's anything else. There's one screw. There's the other screw. There's the other gasket. While we're here, let's put the new gasket on. require a little bit of persuasion. So I'm not going to change the spring. To be honest, I've never had much luck with getting it back in, but I say it's a new spring, so I'm not worried. Okay, that's tight, that's tight. Okay, so the two small rubber rings live underneath the jet. Now I'm going to assume these are not going to look like rubber rings. They're going to look somewhat flat and squished. So yeah, I'll peel that off with a screwdriver, and the new rubber ring goes on there and the idle jet goes back in. That's those two. As far as the copper washer goes, I don't know where it goes. I honestly can't tell you. It's a new part on me, never seen it before. So yeah, copper washer hasn't come out, thus copper washer shall not be going in. Right, let's get on with these little ones here. There it is. It's absolutely flat, dead, hard plastic. No longer a rubber O-ring. New one slides on. Right, and wind that back on there. Same with the other side. Wind it off. Get the horrible old one off. Get the new one on. There we go. Okay, I seem to remember the trick to getting the idle mixture screws set right. Well, I say right, so they get set so that the car will start, and then you can tweak them to the car's needs. Is you wind them down until they stop. From that point you go out 2.5 turns. So that's a half, 1, half, 2.5. This one's at a different angle, so just make a note of that. Okay, half, 1, half, 2, half. Right, I think that might be all of it. There'd be no point to a copper washer anywhere else, would there? As you can see, the mechanism all works nicely. There's the throttle pump. Yeah, that's that jobbed. So let's get the top back on. There we are. New washer on the top. Give that just a little tweak, not all the way up. And then I can start putting on these two and the horribly complicated, useless throttle mechanism. So there's one, there's the other one. Now I'm not going to do these all the way up, just going to lightly nip them so the case still moves a little bit, and then I can deal with this. So I'm going to put it back on time lapse for this because it's going to be a sod and I'm going to be swearing. So right, onwards with the time lapse. Okay, that's the car back together. It will be going back with some notes to the owner. Largely, something really could do with being done about this. You'll probably see in the time lapse, I had this pointing out that way without even considering that it was going to foul the linkage. Now, normally you'd have just a normal single 90-degree bend there, and it wouldn't foul the linkage, but it actually does. It is tight. I made sure it was tight before I put the linkage back on. I took it all off, switched it around, did it up tight, then put the linkage on. But I mean, what a horrible bit of kit. That's the other thing I was on about with the throttle opening. When you open the throttle really gently, the throttle moves a long way in a very short amount of pedal travel, so it makes it really peaky. But the other thing I've noticed is, and see if you can spot this, if I go full throttle, it goes beyond the 90 degrees. So I'm going to assume something has been done wrong with this bit of throttle linkage here, because that stop should allow it to stop exactly on closed, and it's not. And as you can see there, it's open slightly. So there's definitely something up with this linkage. So I'm going to take a bit of a dive at that now, but as for fitting the E10 kit, that's it. Quick recap. You've got the top gasket, you've got the needle valve and its washer, you've got the main jets, you've got the idle jet ones, you've got the fuel line in here, the bottom of the carb, top of the carb, and where the spring goes. And so on this one I've not changed the spring because it was a new spring that's just sat, so I'm not too concerned about that. Okay, a couple of days have now elapsed, and I'm going to give you a quick update on the throttle linkage because it was a little bit of a finicky one. The issue was twofold. It was both an incorrect linkage, which, as you may now notice, the linkage has been changed, and if I was to open the throttle up, we get the full 90 degrees of throttle, which is what you want. But it was also to do with the butterflies. The butterflies were not centralized, and if I can get the light to shine correctly on here, you will see a bright scored line underneath this butterfly, and it's a straight line and you can see it all the way along. If I move along to this carburettor, you can see the score line start and it gradually disappears up underneath the spindle here, and this butterfly was quite a way out of alignment, so I had to undo. Well, the easiest way to do it is to score a line, undo all four, open and close the carb a few times, and then the butterflies will centralize themselves, and you can see by the way your lines moved whether the butterflies, well, so you can see whether the butterflies have moved if your line moves. So yes, these are now then done back up, everything is as it should be, we get full throttle and all is good. Yes, there we go. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like and share it with all your friends that are going to be doing the same thing. Thank you very much. I'll see you on the next one.